Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe, and welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers Kristy.
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we are part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to help make it one focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy podcast. Today is Friday, the 12th of March, 2021. Happy pandemic anniversary, Kristy.
I thought that was yesterday. I guess it's this week is all.
Yeah, it's this week, right? So I was actually looking at my Time Hop today, which is an app that I have on my phone that, not only tells me like pictures from previous days, but social posts and texts and stuff like that. And a year ago today is when we got the text from our investors and founders, Lala and Ronaldo, saying that we were going to shut down the office and everyone was going to hunker down at home. And on the way home from work that day, the day prior, we had sort of roughly talked about it. And I remember, Ronaldo saying, do you think we should shut down the office? Because we'd all already started to kind of take measures, but we didn't really know. And then I think I was listening to NPR yesterday, and the NBA that night actually canceled games and canceled the rest of the season on March 11th. And when they did that as sort of the leaders in stop and think, it was kind of a domino effect that other businesses really aggressively and quickly started shutting down. I just remember that conversation. And this morning, the feeling that we had of uncertainty and confusion, a year later, the world looks so much better, right? There's so much more optimism. The vaccine is creating a lot more space and it's getting wider distribution. And we've been through hell. And I do think that this March 12th feels better than March 12th a year ago, at least for me.
I think there was a lot of fear and uncertainty, but when we were like, let's just take 2 weeks and not be circulating and try to slow the spread or, flatten the curve, whatever. It was just a few weeks.
It was
6
temporary.
weeks. It was temporary. And the fact that 2 weeks has been extended to 52 and more, because we're not really through it yet.
Exactly.
I think that all of us have gone through some sort of a traumatic experience collectively. In the beginning, there was a lot of that collective feeling. There was a lot of coming together, which I think as time has gone on, has gotten a bit frayed.
Yes.
And I was actually listening to Ezra Klein this morning talking with Ashish Jha about how there's been a bit of an overcorrection in the media, that in the beginning, I think there was a downplaying of how traumatic the risk could be and all of that. And now there's a lack of emphasizing the hope and the positive movement that we've made, because we don't want to let up our guard too soon and have another wave and prolong it even more.
Right.
But it is amazing how quickly we've gotten these vaccines, that they invented them.
Yes.
And now that they're actually really rolling out, and by the beginning of May, they should have enough to vaccinate every adult who wants one.
Yeah.
And that is
remarkable.
And so many of my close family and friends, and everyone who's in that older category has now received at least one dose. My friends who are teachers are now going and getting it. My friends who are in emergency services are now going and getting their vaccine. Actually today, I have 6 people I know who are going to get their first dose. And I am thrilled. And the more people who are out there vaccinated, the better it's going to be for the rest of us too. And I'm just excited about getting mine. So you're right. I feel like there's so much movement and positive optimism, but we're still not quite there.
Yeah, we're not quite there.
And when we go back, it's going to be a different world that we go back to, because maybe there's things that we were doing before that may not even make sense to do anymore.
Well, we were just talking about the office, and what does our office situation, what does our collaborative workspace look like in the future in, September, October, when we return? And we, prior to closing down, we had a super high dense office space because the Optimist Daily staff grew really fast, really quickly. And so we at one point put up a screen divider in the conference room and made like the back third of a conference room where really only 2 desks would fit. A desk for myself and our amazing colleague, Lauren. And then half the time Brennan was there sitting on the floor playing too. And it's just like that intense density where we were all within several feet from each other. And then there was a conference table, full of other people working on the other side. That probably won't be what the future of work looks like, right?
No.
People have different expectations. And now, actually on the pandemic anniversary, today, my family and I closed escrow on the home that we're purchasing so that I can go move somewhere more spacious and continue to work remotely. I mean, that has forever changed. And if a year ago you said to me, oh, do you think you could continue to work with Kristy to run the Optimist Daily states apart? That idea wouldn't have even existed to us, right? We wouldn't have even thought it was possible. And now we know it is.
Yeah. Well, so the world is changing in ways we don't even yet know how it'll be different when we come out of it, because they're still in the fog of pandemic captivity. But It's exciting, and I'm thrilled for you that you have a place to go now, Summers, and it's confirmed.
I know, it's official. So yes, but I will say this morning started my husband and I reading the Optimist Daily Solutions, and he has taken to reading me the headlines in the morning as I'm getting Brennan breakfast and whatnot. And we didn't know, we knew we were going to close, but we didn't know what time of day it was going to happen. And so we wanted to start our day with optimism and a little centering and a little positivity, so we didn't feel the intensity of, a real estate transaction. And we both were cracking up because it was like a great day on the Optimist Daily. And some of the stories were very funny and very entertaining and, led to kind of great family conversations or conversations between he and I. And then the other stories were really salient and really impactful from a family standpoint as well as from an ecological standpoint. There's some stuff about transportation and batteries. There's stuff about family dynamics. And which one should we kick it off with mine or yours?
Well, I'll kick it off just for fun, because we're talking about how the world is changing and how our relationship to the world is changing. And the COVID pandemic is one part of that experience. But there's other things that are really shifting. And the headline that I wanted to talk about is about gender. And so this headline offers 5 ways that parents can combat the limitations of gender stereotypes. And as a nation, the United States has been involved with an ever-evolving process when it comes to human rights issues. This summer, we saw a lot in relation to systemic racism. Sexism is another thing that we've been focusing on, the idea of fluid gender. And this is something that's really hard for people to get their minds around if they haven't grown up in a community or in a world where gender is something that is fluid or flexible. I mean, just the last 20 years have really transformed the way we think about what it means to be male or female and how you show up in the world, right? And this is one of those things that really shakes people to their bedrock, their core. So this article is about starting with children. And if you want to improve their sort of understanding of themselves in the world, starting with the younger generations, you can rebuild worldview and biases as they grow up. And this is just 5 ways that parents and guardians can combat limiting gender stereotypes. And I mean, when I was a kid growing up, my mother was super into telling me I could be anything I wanted to be. We were just talking about jobs. So she wanted me to be a doctor. She wanted me to be a scientist. She wanted me to do something in the world that wasn't just a nurse or a teacher, which was what her father told her she could be. Yeah. If she wanted to be a professional woman, she had to choose between teaching, secretary, or nurse, and she became a nurse. So it's just interesting to go against what those stereotypical careers are. We're sort of beyond that to some extent, not all the way. But now we're talking about, like, who are you in your core? Yeah. Who are you, and how do you feel like is your truest, most natural self?
Kristy, you and I have talked about how our mothers were limited in their career trajectories and career options, and that there was almost sort of a complete polar opposite effect where it was you can be everything you want, you can be anything you want, and it was almost sort of this like punitive demand that you be everything you want and a mother and
still be a good girl.
and still be a girl, right? Like you can be a female CEO, but just don't forget you're a female. So
I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan.
Exactly. I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, and do the dishes afterward, all in heels, wearing an apron, looking cute. And that those gendered limitations, and then also for men as well, right? Like this idea that as a man, you're going to be
strong and
but then also like a loving dad who plays soccer with his kids and then who also knows how to knit. And, it's just like all of these, it's almost like the various gender applications got just applied to everyone instead of just saying like, who you are as a person has nothing to do with whether you like to knit or you bring home the bacon or you bake the bacon, right? And so some of these skills that I think, and sorry for jumping in here, but I just think it's such an important conversation because we do have a next step in how we evolve the gendered experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like both of us, I think, have people in our close universe who are trans. Mm-hmm. And I have close family friends and family members who identify as gay. But when I was a kid growing up, that was sort of this weird, unthinkable kind of thing. But now it's just kind of normal. And these are just people that we love. It's not a big deal. But there's been a huge shift in cultural understandings. And part of that is like when I was a kid, the kind of work that my mother was doing with me, like just really trying to encourage me to not be limited by stereotypical career choices. But I'm still plagued with it in some ways in terms of who does more dishes and who does more cooking and who does more shopping and who takes care of the kids and those kind of things. And now that we've all been home and the mothers are having to be teachers as well as workers, it's really had a huge effect on our understanding of like how much we rely on these people who are helping to raise our children outside of our world. Anyway, this story is not about that. Sorry to go on, but I think it's very interesting. And if we do have the goal of going away from limiting stereotypes and how it gets into our minds, limiting gender stereotypes is something to be aware of. And
yes.
And so this article I thought was an interesting solution to share, even though it may shake some people up to think about. You may have a child that is LGBTQ or something else. Right. And more high school students today, 11% are identifying as in those LGBTQ plus. The idea of gender fluidity is very common in that the Generation Y or the millennial. I mean, more than millennials, it's this new generation. What are they being called? The I generation? I don't know what they're called these days.
I used to be an expert in generations, but haven't kept up.
But marketing is so, in the very smallest levels of kids, it's so gendered. One thing I've been aware of is like, my little 3-year-old nephew, he loves Frozen. Mm-hmm. So he's playing Anna and Elsa at times. And I think, a generation ago, that would have really freaked out his parents. Now it's just like, oh, okay, he's being Elsa today, And you were talking about Brennan wanting to be, she's in love with Coco.
With JJ, right? Yeah. With Cocomelon, JJ from Cocomelon. Well, and gendered marketing, I think what I see as a mom, that there is slightly less gendered marketing than used to be. And then they'll make toys that are, when I go onto Amazon and I search little girl toys, I'm delighted to see companies like Girl Blocks and some of the other companies that are giving sort of structural engineering type toys. And one of the very first toys I bought Brennan was a workbench with a screwdriver and a hammer. And her father is a highly mechanical person. I'm pretty mechanical, but I'm a little more on the communication side. And I'm so delighted to watch her as we were packing things away. I was putting away her blocks today and she just said blocks and she sat down with her blocks, and the marketing is changing, mm-hmm. but, and I use the word but very rarely, it is still very present. Right. And you have to be careful with it. And I love that one of the tips is, just be aware that it's there, acknowledge that it's there. And like we talk about with some of the media, discuss with your children why it might be there. Mm-hmm.
So another tip here is to maybe do some counter stereotyping, disrupting gender stereotypes at home, using gender neutral language, which is an interesting one that I think and all of these ideas might really touch us in the adult populations, or especially the grandparent level, as being really beyond the pale. No way. It might really shake us up because the way our world is structured is the dichotomy of man and woman, male, female, and we are moving into a whole different era of more fluid types of careers, more fluid types of roles, and finding our essential selves. It's just an interesting cultural moment. And that's why I wanted to focus on this article. And we've gone on and on. I think both you and I have a lot to say about it. But go read the article. It's a great story.
Share your thoughts with us on social on this conversation and how we evolve the gendered experience. I'm going to just touch really quickly because we are going on and on. My favorite story today that made me laugh was the Fleshable, Erasable pregnancy test. So the headline reads, Leah is the world's first flushable biodegradable pregnancy test. Now, anyone who has attempted pregnancy or tried very hard to get pregnant or tried not so hard to not get pregnant may be very familiar with the idea of buying multi-packs of pregnancy tests. And certainly those of us who pursued fertility at a later age, like I did, it was really hard because my husband and I were unable to conceive for a very long time, and we thought we weren't going to be able to. And I was very aware of the ubiquitous amount of waste that was involved in pregnancy tests. I was saying to Kristy and Amelia, I've probably taken 100 pregnancy tests in my life. And just like revisiting my menstrual cycle and trying to make it more efficient by using a menstrual cup versus all the plastic applicator tampons, this is another solution for happier, healthier menstrual and fertility footprints. So basically, it's made out of the same stuff toilet paper is made out of. It responds. You can flush it, and it can be both discreet and good for the universe. And anyway, read that story. It's really fun. Great job, Leah. There are other companies that we love, like Viv for Your V, that are all helping in feminine, intimate, and menstrual, and all
promoting health and biodegradability.
Exactly. Health and biodegradability. So other fantastic stories on the Optimist Daily. We're going to let you go read the headlines because we have been chatting for far too long. But thank you guys for this optimistic Friday and for listening to the Optimist Daily Update.
We promise to keep sharing these solutions-based, positive stories with ideas on how you can participate in the changing world to help ensure it is changed for the good. We promise to keep covering current events with accuracy and legitimate sources and offering you the information needed most and a slightly reframing of these stories to help you chart new paths for all of us. And if you have the means and you like what we're doing, please consider becoming an emissary or sharing the Optimist Daily with your friends on theoptimistdaily.com. For just $5 a month, you can help support reader-funded independent journalism and be a part of this solution-changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with a problem-solving mindset. Please help us keep the Optimist Daily free for everyone who needs it by being supported by those of us who can. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys. Bye.